welcome to Elements of Ayurveda, Empowering Wisdom of Life. I'm your host, Colette, and in this podcast, I hope to empower you to take charge of your own health by sharing the holistic teachings of Ayurveda, the ancient healing tradition from India. We will also discuss topics like health and wellness, nutrition, yoga, fitness, meditation, breath work, and much more, as well as interviewing lots of inspiring people along the way. My humble wish is to help you to connect to your true nature, to Mother Nature, and to each other. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe to the show, and the new episodes will automatically download for you to enjoy. If you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend you listen to the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. I've also set up a Facebook group for us to connect and to support each other, and I'd love for you to join me over at Elements of Ayurveda podcast group. And now, here's the show. Hello, and welcome to Elements of Ayurveda. In this episode, I'm very happy to be joined by Diane Goldner. Now, Diane is an energy healer, and she graduated cum laude from Barnard College and began her career as a journalist. She has written for the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, American Health, and other publications, and has served as editor for Variety and USA Weekend. Now, while doing research for an article, Diane was introduced to the field of energy healing and began to study it further. Now, 20 years later, Diane is an internationally known healer. She is based in Los Angeles, but also has offices out of New York. She does long-distance healings all over the country and internationally. Diane is currently listed as a recommended resource by Dr. Christian Northrup, and her books are recommended also by Bernie Siegel, MD. Diane, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Great. Well, I have lots of questions, Diane, so let me get started.
Okay.
So you grew up in New York, right, in an academically oriented family, as you said yourself in your current book. And yes, you followed that path by going to a prestigious Ivy League college, and you launched your career as a journalist. But before we go forward, I want to go back a little bit because I was reading through your book, and when you were a child, you were an avid reader, right?
Absolutely. I always wanted to be a writer because I loved to read so much.
Right. And what I was intrigued by that you were attracted to the esoteric books of Seth by Jane Roberts and reading all about the law of karma and consciousness.
Yes, I found it completely riveting and fascinating, and I was just, it just had the ring of truth to it for me.
Right. And what age were you approximately when you were reading those books?
I was probably 15.
Wow.
I think.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that these books were not exactly accepted in your family.
Oh, yeah. My mother was horrified that I was reading junk like that.
Really? And so, and how do you think, did you stop? Did you continue secretly reading them, or did you stop that?
I think I might have put it away at that time, you know, because I couldn't pursue that road until many years later. Right.
Yeah. So when I read about this in your book, I was like, I wonder if there was a belief system installed then at that stage, at that young age, about reading that spiritual side of you, reading these books, and that there's something wrong with it.
I think that I don't think it's uncommon in this time and place. I think in our country and maybe a lot of parts of the world, I mean, there's really a focus on scientific materialism.
Absolutely.
Right? Mm-hmm. And that's the phase we're in. And so I definitely was indoctrinated into that, you know, understanding of the world, as all of us are.
Right.
And yeah, so I mean, even when I began investigating healing, I really felt like I was going into a taboo area. It was kind of scary.
Yeah. Well, especially when it wasn't accepted at a young age, when you felt that there was something wrong with that, but you were intrinsically drawn to it.
Yes,
yeah,
I was.
I was intrigued by that in the story. And then you went on and you said that it was a kind of a family tradition to go to therapy for many years, and you felt that there was something that wasn't right.
Well, I mean, I grew up in a family where there's several psychoanalysts, Freudian psychoanalysts.
Right.
So that was the viewpoint. So I tried that.
Yeah.
And, I thought it helped, and it probably did. But then I met I did a piece for the New York Times, and after the story ran, it was about a woman who had started a charity. And after the story ran, she called me up and she said, "Why don't you come meet my spiritual teacher?"
Yeah, this is Ingrid, right?
Yes.
Oh, I love this
thought,
story.
wow, this would make a great story. She was like, "Well, this will change your life." And I'm thinking, this would make a really great magazine article. And so I went, and I was really, I just felt like this wasn't for me, and I didn't think it changed my life, and I left, and I was very bitter that night, and I mean, unreasonably so, right?
Right.
And,
now, this teacher was a meditation master from India, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, a
Okay.
really extraordinary being.
Wow.
But I didn't know that. I had we project who we are onto other people very often. So if you think you're limited, you see other people as limited.
Right.
And, but anyway, after that meeting, I did start meditating every day, and I had really blissful experiences meditating. I was going through a very difficult time, and a lot of anxiety about my career and what to do. And I would have these meditations that I absolutely had to do, and I would get into a state of bliss.
Wow.
And so I had the anxiety and the bliss.
Right. Now, at this stage, you were working as a journalist.
Yes, I was working as a journalist, but I had gone freelance because I had done a lot of different journalism. I had started while I was still in college writing features, and I loved doing that. And then I had gone to work for a very successful investigative law magazine. And I really got fantastic training there. And then so I had a business law background, but I really liked features, and I went back to features, and I really didn't know exactly, whatever I was doing, the other thing looked even better. Right.
Right.
So I'm losing my train of thought here.
Well,
anyway.
yeah, I was just like, you worked, so you were trying all these different fields. You worked as freelance, and you were enjoying your career as a journalist. You had many fun times, and you got to go to Hollywood and
absolutely. I met
interview all these people.
I really met almost everybody, you might want to meet in those days.
Great.
And so, but I did get my train of thought back. So I had gone freelance thinking that somehow that would lead me to what I really wanted to write about, which in fact, ironically, it did, but it took me a long time to understand that.
Yeah.
So I met this meditation teacher, and then I had a blind date with a gentleman, a doctor, a psychiatrist in my wheelhouse, who showed me a book on healing, Barbara Brennan's book, Hands of Light. And I'd never seen anything like it.
Right.
And I thought, oh my God, what if this was real? I mean, here's a scientist talking about energy healing. And I thought, what if this is real? I have to investigate this, because if it is real, and I didn't know if it could possibly be real, I thought, what a scoop. I was very naive.
Right. And just to explain to listeners, if they're not familiar with Barbara Brennan, she's a former NASA scientist. And in this book that your date showed you, that you saw pictures of energy fields and healers surrounded by spirit guides. And Barbara claimed that illness started in the energy fields around the body, and that illnesses could be healed by clearing these vibrations. Isn't that correct?
Yes. And she put it very simply, very directly. And on one hand, I thought maybe the psychiatrist, needed to be committed for carrying around a book like that.
But this is your date, the psychiatrist.
Right. and on the other hand, I was mesmerized, and I really wanted to find out if it could be real. And so as a journalist, I thought, okay, I'm going to investigate. I'm going to get a magazine assignment, and I'm going to investigate this. And that's what I did.
So you ended up interviewing Barbara.
I interviewed Barbara at length. That was the first magazine article. And then I spent time with her afterwards for my book as well. And so by the time I finished the magazine article, I realized there was definitely something to this kind of healing. Mm-hmm. And there were two healings that really stood out for me, because I interviewed a lot of, I'm one of these very exhaustive interviewers.
Well, you're an investigative journalist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't just interview one person,
right.
You interview a multitude of people. Mm-hmm. And that way you get a 360 kind of view of what's really happening. So I interviewed a woman who actually had healings with Barbara, and she had macular degeneration. And she'd had a series of healings, and the hole in one eye had disappeared, and the hole in the other eye had gotten smaller. And
oh my goodness, that's amazing.
Yes, and there were pictures to show, you know. And so I talked to her surgeon and, you know, her eye doctor, her, you know, whatever. And to the degree that he thought he was looking, the next doctor thought he was looking at the wrong set of pictures.
Wow.
So that was pretty compelling, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And I mean, that's just one example, but it was very compelling. And another case was a woman, probably an older lady, who fell and broke her pelvic bone, and it wouldn't heal. And so she was in a wheelchair. Like a year after her pelvic bone broke, she was in a wheelchair because it wouldn't heal. And she had a series of healings, and in the process of those healings, she recalled having been sexually abused.
Wow.
And as that information emerged and was released, her bone healed. So amazing. those two really stuck out in my own mind. And I had an experience.
Yes. I was just about to ask about that with your fifth chakra. Is that the one?
Yes.
Yes.
So Barbara wanted me to come and watch, you know, a class, a demonstration. I was invited to the school. And so she's on the stage. There are 100 people, and she's asking everyone to spin their chakras. And I knew kind of what a chakra was because I had done some reading, but I had never seen one. I didn't know if they were real. And I kind of thought, this is too crazy. And they're spinning their chakras, and there was no way for me to ascertain whether this was real. So as a reporter, you can imagine this is very distressing.
I know, out of your zone completely.
It was out of my zone. And first chakra, second chakra, third chakra, fourth chakra. They get to the fifth chakra, and my throat just closes up.
Wow.
I can't breathe. I'm like, it's burning. I'm like in terror. I look around to see if I can run to the exit, and it was so far away, I knew I would never make it. And then the thought occurred to me that fifth chakra is connected to the throat. And as soon as I had that thought, my throat opened up again.
Oh, just the realization of it.
Just the realization of what, yes. And after the class, I had been chaperoned by one of the teachers, and she said to me, oh, that happened because you have a block in your fifth chakra.
Okay.
As a writer, you don't want to hear that, because I knew that the fifth chakra was connected to words, the language, speaking up, writing, creative expression.
Your voice, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, that can't be.
Right.
But I did have that experience, so something had happened. Yeah.
Wow. And so you spent 5 years investigating energy
5
healing.
years.
So you were like, there's something here. And I know I probably before that with Barbara, that experience with Barbara on stage, that you also were interviewing Michael Crichton, the best-selling author of Jurassic Park, and he spoke to you about auras. And so all these little messages were coming to you in different ways, right, to get you intrigued. And then you spent 5 years investigating energy healing for a book. Is that correct? And using yourself as a guinea pig.
I did. I went for healings. And the first healer I went to, who was just a wonderful woman, you know, I had a few healings, and I you know, things were happening, but I was so resistant that I dismissed all the experiences that turned out to be extremely significant in my life. But then I went for my fifth chakra, fifth healing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And she's like looking at me, and she says, you know, you have these quills in your neck. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me, because quills in my neck. I've never seen that, right?
Yeah.
I've looked in the mirror more than a few times. And she said, they're there. I said, well, then how did they get there? And she said, well, when you tried to speak your truth, people would throw barbs, especially men, because the quills are on the right side of your neck.
Oh, the masculine side of their body.
Yes. And I really thought about getting up and leaving. And then I thought, well, let's just see how she spins this.
The skeptic.
Right. So I got on her table and I had the healing and everything's fine. And then she gets to my neck, and I swear it was whatever she was doing was so irritating and uncomfortable. I just wanted to get up and kill her. Wow. And I was like, what are you doing? Yeah. And she said, I'm taking the quills out of your neck.
Oh my gosh.
And yes. And so I was very resistant. And, at the end I said, are these quills going to come back? And she said, not unless you let them. And I walked out thinking I was never going to have another healing with this person again, and who I love very much now. Yeah. And, a week or two later, I was at a family vacation, and one of my male relatives and I got into some kind of fight over something, it doesn't even matter. But all of a sudden I heard the tone of his voice, and I was, hey, you can't speak to me like that. Mm. And the next day when I was flying home, I thought, oh my God, those are the quills she's talking about. Wow. Those are the barbs. And it was literally like somebody had gone in and changed my programming. Wow. Something a tone of voice that I had never heard, that I'd lived with my whole life.
That's amazing.
I suddenly could hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I thought. I
thought,
oh, wow. Yeah.
And it's like, it's just like with your other recognition of when Barbara was on stage in the fifth chakra and realizing it was your throat, and then the release, just realizing, making the connection to where these barbs or these quills were coming from. And then that was
I think, yes, but I think it was really, she did all that energy work.
Yes,
and
of
so
course.
That's where she did my consciousness.
Yeah. And then you made the connection to where it was coming from as well. Wow.
Yes. And then after that, I was like, I really have to I have to explore this completely to the limits, right? Yeah. How far can this go? What can it really heal? And what is the science behind it? Because I was still very rational thinker. I still am.
Yes.
And I thought, if this is occurring, it's got to be scientifically based. It's, there's got
the investigator.
And so I looked at the entire scientific record, and I spent all my time with healers, and I would try what they were telling me they were doing, and it would work. I would think that can't possibly work. So I spent 5 years having my boundaries about my ideas of reality tested and dissolved over and over again. It was yes, it was great, but it was very unnerving.
Yes, I can imagine. My goodness, what a test for you.
Yeah.
And then you returned to your friend Ingrid's, the meditation master's ashram for a chanting workshop. And that's where you had a big experience.
It was a chant.
Oh, it was a chant, sorry. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and Ingrid had called me, and she had insisted that I go to this chant, and I was like, oh, no, I can't do that. And she said, I said, I'm going to lose my job. She said, oh, this is so much more important than your job. And I'm on the phone with her, and my boss calls me, and he asked me to come down to see him. And he says, Diane, he said, your 6 months are coming to an end, and I know you don't love this job, which was true. I'd like you to keep writing for me, but I don't really think this is the right job for you. Mm. And I just knew that some force wanted me to go to this chant. It was very unnerving.
That's right, because you were using the excuse of the job that you couldn't go. Oh, I see. Okay, and it's all happening within minutes.
Yes. So I went, and it was an all-night chant, and in the morning everyone lines up to receive grace from the teacher, and I hesitated. I wasn't really sure if I should do it. And then I thought, well, I'll just give it one more try. And I had an incredible, what they call Shaktipat, which is the descent of the spiritual energy from the master into the student.
Wow.
And I'd never experienced anything like this. I didn't know it was possible. And I could feel my energy field in so many dimensions. I was, much more vast than my physical body. And I'd never felt any of that before. And this tsunami wave went through all of those fields. And after that, I couldn't argue with the reality.
So that cemented the reality that energy healing and the energy fields and what you're feeling with the Kundalini energy rising.
Yes, and that some people have a lot of spiritual power. Right?
Yes. So was that towards the end of your 5 years?
No, that was towards the beginning.
Oh,
that
okay.
Okay. Yeah, I really attribute those experiences with this master with changing the course of my life, which is exactly what Ingrid had said would happen.
My goodness. And Ingrid was pretty key in this journey, right? That she was really adamant that you go to this master's house, and you were dragging your feet a lot.
Yes. She was an initiator. I mean, she just saw something in me, I think.
Yes.
And,
That's great.
I think it's destiny,
Absolutely.
When those things happen. Yeah.
Absolutely. So after this 5 years of investigative work on energy healing, and now you're pretty clear that, okay, I want to write a book, correct? You were writing a book then at the end
I was writing the book. After the first year, the first year was the magazine article.
Right.
And after that, I was working on the book, and then it came out 5 years. So the whole thing was about a 5-year period.
And that first book came out in 99?
99, and it was originally called Infinite Grace, where the worlds of science and spiritual healing meet.
Okay.
And then my publisher reissued it in paperback, and it's now called How People Heal.
Wow, great. And now let's fast forward on in your latest book, Awakening to the Light.
Yes, there's actually two new books, Awakening to the Light, and which is about what we've been talking about, my journey from an investigative healer to from an investigative journalist to a healer. And I've also come out with another book called Yes, You Can Heal.
Beautiful. So the Awakening to the Light and Yes, You Can Heal, they've come out in the past few months?
Yes, You Can Heal just came out in the end of April. So, and then Yes, You Can Heal is really about my 20 years of experience as a healer. So I've been a healer now 20 years. And so I share a lot of stories about healing, and I don't know where to begin. I could begin with something simple.
Yeah, whichever comes to mind for you. I'd love to hear a couple of stories.
I gave a talk. Friends of mine hosted a tea for the media in New York right before my book came out, and I gave all these really intense examples. And someone said, "Well, maybe coming out of a coma isn't something everyone can relate to." So let's see. Cancer is something a lot of people either know somebody who has cancer or they face cancer. So there's a lot of different things you can do as a healer or for yourself. So one woman came to me. She called me. This was actually long distance healing. She had 3rd-degree radiation burns on her upper body from radiation treatment. And they were blistering, and they were wrapped from the front to the back of her body. And she was really desperate for some kind of relief. And I did a healing, and she said the following morning, the burns had shrunk up. And I'm just going to quote her. "It was more like a rash than a burn. It was a miracle. You couldn't use another word to describe it. I'm an MIT-trained physicist. That was proof to me that energy healing works. I should have taken pictures to show the doctors."
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I got goosebumps here. That's incredible.
I know. Yeah. So this is why I wrote the book, because I so often read about somebody, and I just wish they knew that this kind of help was available to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And also that the person doesn't have to go through anything traumatic.
Yeah, well, or it can just be so alleviated.
Yes.
So it's not,
So when you work with people, you can do a healing, but do you need to know the circumstances? Do you delve deep into the story? Do you look at belief systems, or it's just that you give the healing?
It just is so variable. Every healing is different.
Okay.
When I go into the energy, things emerge. I worked on her body, but there was some other aspects to the healing that had to do with, I'm trying to go back into my memory banks, that had to do with belief systems about doership versus being.
Okay.
And as I released, that helps the physical shift too. You're changing. So on one level, I was working literally on bringing light to the physical to release what was going on.
Okay.
But it was also releasing other levels.
Okay. And so do you sometimes have to give homework for people to do? Or
yes, I do.
So that they're playing an active part in their healing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes, I just work with a gentleman, or ongoingly I'm working with him. And so there's some challenges in the marriage, and I'm really trying to get him to look at his anger.
Okay.
We can complain about somebody else, and I'm not saying that the spouse doesn't have issues. We all have issues, but we can never change another person. We can only change ourselves.
Right.
And believe me, in most cases, there's plenty to change in ourselves. I know from personal experience.
Absolutely. So, and changing that can change your perception of a situation.
Yes, and it can also, just changing yourself will often change the other person. Yeah,
so that's very true, because then you bring a different energy to a situation, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. I've experienced that myself, where having an issue in a relationship, and then I worked on that from afar with a healer, and then when I went and met that person again, everything had shifted, because I came with a different energy.
Yes. Yeah. It's really amazing.
It is amazing. Happens. It's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's beautiful. How you've done your healing work, because the reality changes.
Yes, exactly. I know. Yeah. And it can happen so easily too. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a traumatic.
Right. Sometimes it's very easy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's so easy. I think to myself, how could it be this easy? I know. And other times it's the opposite. It's very, very difficult. I think, sometimes people have very heavy, deep thought forms or feelings from their experiences in childhood, or a lot of times it gets passed through the generations. Yeah. So you're just in the field of somebody who has those issues, and you absorb them, and then they become yours.
Yeah, that's something that it may not just be belief systems from childhood or trauma from childhood, that it could be passed down to generations, and it will keep on going until somebody stops and works on it. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. But it doesn't mean it's truly genetic. Maybe sometimes there's a genetic component, but often I think there might, it just depends on the situation. I actually have been working on healing my vision. And, my mother was very nearsighted, and my father was, somewhat nearsighted. So I just assumed it was genes. And now I don't think that's true.
Okay.
I had a lot of migraines and tension in my, whole, temples and everything, and forehead. And I was very nearsighted. And so I decided I would see if I could heal my nearsightedness and what that would shift. And so I went from literally being so nearsighted that I couldn't even read a book, because I'd have to hold it so close that you couldn't see the whole page, to now I can drive during the day and see signs without glasses.
Oh my
and things.
goodness.
I don't have 20/20, and at
Mm-hmm.
night it's much less. But it's still a dramatic healing.
Yeah.
But it's taken me a dozen years to get this far.
So, and can you heal yourself, or do you have to go to another healer?
I think this was really a combination. I actually started with a Bates method vision person in the first year. And she just helped me relax, like a lot of muscles were held, around the eye. That's what nearsightedness, it's very held. So I worked on that. And then I went to one of my mentors, Rosen Briere, who's an amazing healer, and she helped quite a bit. And then I've worked on it myself, both just relaxing my vision and accepting things I couldn't see before. And so it's been a combination.
Great. That's great. Yeah. And like you said, it can take time.
Yes. I mean, listen, I've been wearing glasses since I'm in third grade.
Okay.
So I don't tell you how many years that is.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
And so, if you've had something a long time, it doesn't usually go away overnight.
Yes. And did you study with Barbara Brennan?
That's a funny question that I can't answer in the normal way. I didn't enroll in her school.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time at her school.
Yeah.
And one of her students, the woman was a student at the time, she's now a graduate, Gerda Swearingen and some other people too, Thomas Ayers. They really took me under their wing. So they were students there, and they became my personal first mentors.
Oh,
and
beautiful.
It was incredible. And Gerda was very, she really was like forceful.
Okay.
So, I would ask her, what are you seeing? How do you see? And she's, well, you can see too. And I'd be like, no, I can't. And then she would make me, she would like tell me, look at that woman. Tell me what's wrong.
Okay. So she was really bringing it out in you.
She really, really pushed me in a great way.
Yeah.
And
that's it. It was already inside you.
But I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I really didn't know that. And I was like sure that I could never have gifts like this.
Yeah. But I like going back to that interest you had as a teenager, that you're reading those books. You were intrigued by it. It was naturally inside you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I have some theories about that. I mean, one other book that I had read as a child, I was even younger. I was like, maybe in third grade or something. And I don't remember the name of the book. It was a science fiction book. And it was about a group of beings who would visit the earth and help, humans develop. And they had special abilities like clairvoyance and the ability to heal. And I just thought, wow, I would love to be like that.
Oh, you see? Yeah. Isn't that amazing? It was always there.
Yeah, so it was always there.
Yeah, and then it just got reignited. I love how it all happened through your work,
Yes.
and then you were on assignments about healing, and then you decided to take on more because you were intrigued by it. It's just a great story in the awakening to the light. I think that's excellent. So can you share another story of healing with us? Just one more?
Oh gosh, of course.
I love it.
No, I do so many that I almost don't remember them. Okay, so I just did one recently. In fact, I might be writing about it for my newsletter. A gentleman asked me if I could help him stop smoking, and I said, let's see what we can do. I never know. I never promise a result because I never know, and every case is different, and every situation is different. But I did a healing with him. And he's like in his early 30s, and he'd been smoking since he's a teenager. And he tried quitting several times, and he could never quit. And I did a healing. This was long distance. And I worked on releasing his need to smoke and giving his power back to himself instead of giving it to the cigarettes or vaping or whatever. And he called me a few weeks later and he said, Diane, I can't believe it. I thought I was going to die a smoker, and I haven't smoked in a week, and I have no desire to smoke.
Wow. That's fantastic. The desire, the urge just went away.
The urge went away. And he couldn't believe it. Now, the next person could come to me, and it might not be that simple, or it might be. I just,
That's it. Each case is different. And like you said, it could be something very deep that you have to work with longer, especially if it's coming through the genes, that you might have longer work to do, more sessions. It's a bit harder to release.
Yeah, so I worked with a woman who had irritable bowel syndrome.
Yeah.
And she she didn't even tell me how bad it was until later, until I healed her.
Okay. Yeah.
But she said, this is in the book too. She said, the one about smoking isn't in the book, but she said that she had, after the first session, she felt calmer. After the second session, she said, I never had that unrest in my stomach again that always preceded an attack. She was so debilitated that she couldn't leave her house to walk her daughter 3 blocks to school without worrying about. Yes, and she was on anti-anxiety medicine and lived on Imodium pills.
Wow.
So she said after the second session, she dropped all of her medicine. And after about 5 sessions, her irritable bowel syndrome was completely gone. She said, I had tried everything: medicine, colonoscopies, blood tests, food allergy tests, acupuncture, psychiatry. The only thing that worked was you.
Wow.
You have absolutely changed my life. So that's an amazing healing.
Diane, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and the next person, I don't mean to... it is beautiful and it's wonderful. And when I do a healing like that, of course, I'm so grateful that I can offer somebody that kind of relief. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that it would happen for the next person so easily.
Right, exactly. But it's so beautiful what you can do for the people that come to you. And I believe that, those people are finding you for a reason. And,
yes.
It's so wonderful. It's beautiful. So where can people find your books?
Well, definitely on Amazon. Yes, You Can Heal should be available through any store. It might not be in the bookstore, but they can order it for you. And Awakening to the Light, the same. And How People Heal, probably mostly online. And all 3 books are also ebooks.
Okay, great. So on Amazon, definitely. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, all those places.
Wonderful. Yeah. And what about finding out more information about you? And I believe that you have a special offer for the podcast listeners today.
Anyone who buys my book, there's a link on my website where you can fill out your receipt, and you just write elements also in that same area. And I'm offering a webinar, 5 ways to add light to your life, with actual skills that you can use over and over again to add light to your life.
Wonderful. So, and the code is elements.
The code, and then just the receipt, the receipt number. Okay. They put their name in. There's a form. You put your name in and your code number, the receipt number, and just write elements.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'll send it to everyone a link to anyone who buys the book.
Okay. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Beautiful.
Yes.
And so other offerings that you have, you do consultations online?
I do consultations. Well, I mean, they can book through email or calling, and, but it's actually in person or on the phone. Although when I do long distance healing, we get off the phone for the transmission part.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And I will be having different webinar series coming up. And I also do occasionally teach something called Awakening Your Light Body, which gives people the skills to connect to their own energy and work with energy directly.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Yeah. And that's an online course?
No, it's in person.
Oh, it's in person. Okay.
It's 2 weekends. It's 2 very intensive weekends, but it's really a year-long process.
Okay. And where does that happen?
It happens in either New York or Los Angeles. I mean, it's also possible I would teach somewhere else at some other point if there was a group. I'm open to other things. But if somebody's interested in doing that, they should just email me, because when I see a group starting to form, that's when I plan to offer a class. I don't just do the class unless,
I understand. So what is your email and your website address?
Okay, the website is dianegoldner.com. And my email is dianegoldner@gmail.com.
Wonderful. And I'll put those links in the show notes as well, everybody. So you just head on over to the show notes, and then you'll find those links to take you over to Diane's website. And so, Diane, as we finish up here today, is there anything else you would like to add, or any advice that you would give the listeners today?
Yes. There's a solution to everything.
Oh.
And that solution is always connecting to the light and being more and more connected inward to your own true self.
Oh, now you're speaking my language. That's what I do. In Ayurveda, it's all about discovering your true self. So I love that.
That's the ticket.
Yes,
that's
absolutely. And trusting in yourself, right?
Yes, it sounds easy, but I know from my own personal experience, it can be an arduous process, but there's nothing more important or more wonderful.
Absolutely, than listening to your own inner guidance.
Yes.
Well, that's a perfect place to leave this conversation, Diane. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for all the wonderful work you're doing in the world. It's amazing.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Oh, it's been fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Diane, take good care of yourself, and I wish you all the best.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Diane Goldner. Her story of how she became an energy healer is really inspirational. And I believe we all have something special inside us, and it's about uncovering your true nature, your true self. And life is a journey of self-realization. So doing the self-study through Ayurveda, yoga, and energy healing can really help you uncover your true self. And as always, if you're enjoying the content of the show, I would really appreciate a rating and review if you haven't already done so. It really helps others to find the show. Thanks for tuning in. Take good care of yourself.